Ben Fogle, welcome to Acting Prime Minister. Thanks for welcoming us into your very eclectic home. It's everything you'd expect from an adventurer's home, I'd say.
It's not quite 10 Downing Street, is it?
No, but it's got its own charm, hasn't it? It's beautifully presented. You've got so many fascinating pieces of artwork and obviously things that you must have sort of collected along the way of your adventures, I'm guessing.
I'm a bit of a magpie. So as I travel, I find interesting things that I bring back as memories, I think, for all of those journeys. I love meeting people, exploring places, and I think living in central London as I do, I like to bring a little bit of the world back with me into my house. And I took that to the extremes once. I actually managed to bring back a tarantula. Unintentionally, a tarantula had stowed away in my bag and escaped in my garden. Never found it, but we should probably move on from this.
Hopefully it's not breeding somewhere in a warm spot in London.
Luckily it was midwinter. I got some keepers from London Zoo to come and check and they couldn't find it. So hopefully there is not a spider loose in North Kensington.
Well, let's take a little of the wilderness into Downing Street now. Let's promote you into number 10 for the afternoon. So I want you to imagine, you drive through those Downing Street gates and you step out of the car, you walk up to the big black famous door and you turn to the cameras, which are all snapping the new Prime Minister. At that moment, who do you think you'd want to sort of emulate? Do you think you'd have the smile of Tony Blair or the business-like body language of Margaret Thatcher? Who would you want to be like?
So it's a very good question, that. I don't think it's about emulation. I think it's about making your own mark, isn't it?
Sure.
I
so
would
you'd want
probably
a different style of Prime Minister.
I would, and I think governing now has changed a lot. If we look back at previous prime ministers, right back to Churchill, for example, it was very formal, wasn't it? There was the two-piece suit and the tight tie, and moving on towards Blair, and then Blair started getting a bit more relaxed. Cameron more so. I suspect for a start I would be a bit more casual. I think I wouldn't appeal to everyone, but that would be my governing style, to kind of really roll my sleeves up, and I think you set a tone by how you address people, how you dress, and
so maybe not a navy blue suit then, like the rest.
I think it would be an obvious choice, wouldn't it? But I think I would probably try to dress down a little bit more, and that would horrify a lot of people. That's why I'm not ever going to probably be decent notice of probably. It's why I will never be Prime Minister. I do love a pair of shorts, so I would probably be in shorts and a smart shirt, just to kind of have a nod towards formality.
And do you have any sense of which party you might belong to when you step through that door?
Do you know, I think it's one of the sadnesses for me about politics right now, because I'm fascinated by politics. I love reading about politics. I'm interested in it, and but there is no one that represents me right now. I think the two main parties, Labour and the Conservatives, have gone too far to the left and to the right, and I think the Liberal Democrats are not. It's almost like a wasted vote in my mind to join them. The Greens are probably the closest to my passions and my beliefs in life, but I don't think they're effectual enough. So I feel I'm in a no man's land, and I don't think I'm alone. I think there are quite a few of us now. So I don't have any political reference that I feel is my home right now.
It's interesting you say that, because obviously we've just had a few MPs break away from the Labour Party and the Conservative Party to form the Independent Group, effectively making the same argument as you are now. So perhaps that would be an appealing party, whatever it turns into later down the line for you. Is that where you think you might sit in the centre of politics?
Possibly. I think one of the other things that I think makes me a bit uncomfortable about politics generally is that it's all about personality now. It feels like they've forgotten about what they're actually supposed to do, which is govern a country and make Britain great.
Obviously, Jeremy Corbyn was elected leader of his party on a bit of a wave of anti-establishment feeling, and lots of people felt very enthused by his policies. Have you ever had any sort of sympathy with Jeremy Corbyn? Actually.
Listen, when I was 18, I went off to Latin America. I had the Communist Manifesto with me. I think I had leftist leanings, and certainly, for a while, I admired Fidel Castro, this brave model, the fact that he had remained in power. Latin America was my obsession. I studied Nicaragua as my main topic at university. I obviously subsequently have realised in my belief now is that communism doesn't work, and it kind of fell apart. But I think when Corbyn first appeared, actually, I thought he was actually a breath of fresh air. I liked his no-nonsense attitude. I liked the fact that he stuck to his beliefs. But he sort of, I think I've lost respect for him. I think the anti-Semitism thing, I don't believe there is smoke without fire. I don't follow enough of the actual accusations, but it makes me feel uncomfortable enough to not necessarily feel the affinity that I had in the first instance. And I think that's very sad, because I think actually he had the potential at one point to actually make me a home again, to actually find someone like me who is a political kind of refugee right now, because there is no one. He's sort of lost me by affiliating himself with slightly unpleasant individuals in my mind.
What about Theresa May? Any connection with her? Would you want to emulate any of her qualities as Prime Minister?
Do you know what? That stubbornness and that thick skin, I would love some of that. That's amazing, because I'm very thin-skinned. That's why I could never really be, I know I'm being Prime Minister for the day for you now, but I could never be Prime Minister. I couldn't take all the criticism.
Really, do you think?
And I think the flack that she has taken, the votes of no confidence, the constant negative comments from the press and from her own party, it's astonishing that she has soldiered on. That is one tough individual. So I really admire that. Her politics and some of the things that she's doing, not enough to feel that the Conservatives would be my natural party home right now.
It's interesting that you say you're thin-skinned, because you've climbed Everest, you've rode the Atlantic. People wouldn't necessarily think of you as someone who would be thin-skinned or sensitive.
Well, do you know how? So this is another passion of mine, a bugbear of mine, is that when I was a child, I failed all my exams. I got an N in my A-level geography, and it's to this day it annoys me that we as a country and our education system still relies on exam results to define success and failure.
Sure.
When you're a child and you continuously fail exams, and listen, I had great opportunity. My parents sent me to a private school, so I was given the best opportunities I could possibly have. But some of us are wired to retain information and to regurgitate it in exams. Some of us are wired to have a photographic memory. Some of us can barely remember our own names. It's just how we are wired. And I physiologically, mentally, that's how I was born, that I can't retain information. I'm not very good with names, John. No. In all seriousness, I'm really not good at remembering information.
Yeah.
And it meant that I failed all my exams. And when you fail consistently, and I did all GCSEs, A levels, AS levels, everything, it strips you of your confidence, because you suddenly you give in to failure. You let failure define you, and the fact that was 25 years ago. I'm still trying to rebuild that shattered confidence. Right. And the reason that I go and climb mountains and row across oceans is because I found something that I could do quite well. And it built up a sort of armour around me. And it saddens me that there are so many kids out there, exactly like me, who will fail their exams because they simply aren't wired to retain information and regurgitate it in an exam. And they will be handed the same letter of failure that consigns them to a life of failure. And I think on that note, if I was Prime Minister, I would totally change the whole education system. Why? I'm passionate about the wilderness.
Yeah.
Why are we still teaching in classrooms? Now, a lot of people will then go, well, of course you have to teach in classrooms. It's like, why do you live in a house? But we can be more creative than that. We have, in London, we are one of the greenest cities in the world. We have so much green space. There are people trying to turn this into the first urban national park. There is access to, we've got some beautiful parks, gardens, private gardens, public gardens, commons. Why are we not sort of flipping the classroom model on its head and turning it inside out, and giving children a chance to be outside. And there are models where this has worked beautifully well. Scandinavia, where it's freezing cold. A lot of people go, well, it was always raining. Everyone's going to get muddy. Everyone's going to get cold. Children in particular, calm down. They retain information better. They're less aggressive. They're less prone to depression when in an outside environment. And that doesn't have to be a woods. It doesn't have to be in a remote wilderness. This can be in a little park in central London. So I think one of the main things I would do would change the whole model of education. Scrap exams. It's ridiculous.
Really? Scrap them altogether?
Well, no, I think there are certain vocational jobs that are going to require the ability to retain information. So, of course, if you're going to be an engineer, if you're going to be a scientist, if you're going to be a doctor or a vet, I realise and appreciate and respect the fact that exams and being good at retaining information is important. But there are many of us who end up becoming TV presenters or radio presenters or writers or want to set up our own business or work with a tech company. And I don't think you need exams for those.
So we need to sort of broaden our definition of success.
That's what.
There's lots of different forms of success. Some of it is doing well in the exam.
There you go.
Some of it is excelling at sport. Some of it might be having fantastically creative ideas. Yeah. This is fascinating. I've got to get you back to your first day in Downing Street, though. You need to appoint some cabinet members. Who you can have anyone you want from history. They can be dead or alive, famous, not famous. Just a couple of names. Who would you like to put in your cabinet?
Well, I mean, we'd have to have. I'd pick both Ernest Shackleton and Captain Scott.
Okay.
Both quite divisive, very different leadership models. I actually went down to Antarctica a few years ago to make a program about the two individuals, and I went to their little cabins, the huts that they'd left on the ice. And it was fascinating to see the two different models. So we had Captain Scott, the naval seaman, strict hierarchy, had built a wall of crates between the officers and the men.
Right.
And then you go to Ernest Shackleton's hut, and he was merchant seaman. No division between men, all equals.
A bit of a
cabin
socialist.
was a bit of a socialist, and do you know what? It surprises people, especially when they hear my kind of posh accent. Is that I probably do have.
So you sympathise with his no crates approach?
I think it's the carrot or the stick. I actually I respected his model a little bit more, but they're both great leaders, and the fact that Shackleton saved all of his men, the fact that Scott, well, he died in the end, so it wasn't.
He died trying,
but he died trying, and I like that. I like the fact that I like people who try.
Yeah.
So I think I'd have both of them. Attenborough, I think Attenborough has seen.
It's not the first time someone said Attenborough, actually.
Well, I
think maybe he needs to be promoted to the cabinet.
He must be the most respected man in Great Britain, if not the world, because he's apolitical. I think so. He's always remained kind of to the side of party politics, but he is politicised. And when I say politicised, he's passionate about the environment. He's a campaigner, and I think he's shone a light on many important issues. And I like his tone. He's everyone's grandpa, isn't he? And I think he would just set a good tone for my cabinet.
Okay. You can sack people too. I know you say you're not very good with names, but anyone in the cabinet at the moment who you think, why are they still in there?
I think Boris might go. Is he still in the cabinet?
He left last year.
He left. Well, he can go again. Can we double sack him? He left anyway. I think. Is Rees-Mogg still in there? Is Rees-Mogg in there?
He's not in the cabinet, but he's still in Parliament as an MP.
Can we get rid of him?
It might be a bit undemocratic to get rid of him
in the cabinet. I kind of Gove. Gove has done some good things with the environment.
Yeah.
I think he has some good policy, but I still struggle to believe his convictions sometimes. I think he can stay for now, but he's on my watch list.
As long as he keeps doing good work on plastics.
Yeah, and he is doing that. He's made some pretty dramatic policy on UK wildlife. He insisted that any squirrels, deer, any wild animals that had been taken into vets could not be re-released, would have to be euthanized. That's quite a big... So the countryside wildlife, it's a very complex issue that we don't have time to go into now. That's a big statement to make for a couple of animals that could be released back in the wild. I don't know why he did that. I don't know who he was trying to please with a policy like that, but it didn't really please me.
Okay, all right. So maybe not. You've sort of got Gove on your watch list. The next task you've got to do, the phone is ringing off the hook. World leaders want to speak to the new Prime Minister. Who would you like to pick up to first? Which world leaders do you think you'd really fancy having a chat to?
Well, I think Kim Jong-un would be kind of interesting, but I think Trump's done that now, and I think we've seen his true colours. So I think I'd leave that. I think I would be. I mean, I know he seems to have lost his shine, but I've always been a big fan of Justin Trudeau. I'm half Canadian myself,
of course,
and I for a while admired lots of his policy. He seemed to. I liked his approach. It was young. It was fresh. It was open-minded. It was liberal.
We're definitely getting a sense of your politics here. I think you're definitely sort of in the centre somewhere with a liberal, definitely a liberal vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
A sort of social democratic type
you're
vibe,
good
maybe.
At this. You should do this for a job. But I've long admired Justin. I think, and apologies for guessing her name, Jacinda, is it?
Ardern in New Zealand.
So I think she as well, I like the fact that she is so powerful when it comes to women, powerful women, being a mother, being a Prime Minister.
Giving birth as Prime Minister, very rare.
Amazing, and I like their fresh approach. I think some of the Antipodean politics can sometimes be a little bit, I hate using this word, a little bit too redneck for me. But I think that actually she has done a great job so far. Just because I'd quite like to have dinner with them, I think we'd have a laugh.
Yeah, well, there'll be plenty of opportunity to have dinner with these people. President Trump's on the phone. He wants to set up a date for a state visit. What are you going to say?
Anyone listening to this didn't see my eye roll then. I kind of... Trump is... I can't even... A bit like the Brexit word, I find it difficult to bring his name up in this house. You know what's really interesting is my children now... I grew up, I suppose, in the era of worshipping North America. We were consuming all their shows, the A-Team, Knight Rider. You know, America was everything when I was growing up. The USA was everything, and a trip out there was the most exciting thing. My children now, from listening to Radio 4, I mean, they don't listen to Radio 4, but we're listening
it's on in the house.
It's on in the house. So they hear his name and they hear us talking about Trump and trying to explain what's going on the radio. They think he's like the world's biggest bogeyman. And when it came to us visiting America last year, they were like...
terrified.
They were terrified of going to America because. So I think we've probably done quite a bad thing.
But I think that's interesting that maybe people's perceptions of a country can be changed by the person who's leading it.
By the leadership. And the thing that disappoints me most about Trump is his climate denial, climate change denial. Now, I know this is a hot topic, and maybe listeners to this will go, no, I agree, it's all a fabrication, it's all done to make money. Listen, I've spent 20 years in the wilderness. I have been to the poles. I've contributed enough carbon emissions. I do try to offset, by the way, but you know, I'm acutely aware of the impact we humans have on the planet. And I have seen with my own eyes what happens when ice starts to melt, deforestation. And I find it incomprehensible that he can't distinguish between the weather and climate change. And it's predictable, isn't it? Every year, as soon as there's a cold spell, he's like, where's bring back global warming? Yeah. Where's this global warming? And I really just want to say to him, President Trump, please don't be stupid. I know people like to act stupid sometimes, and I know they play up to it, but I see through it. You're an intelligent man. You have to be an intelligent man. No one can accumulate that money and become president without being very astute. And he's now just being deliberately provocative. And there are so many people who feel passionately. Just look at all these school demonstrations around the world. There are so many people that feel so passionate about it. And he is sticking two fingers up at every single one of us. And for that, he's not getting a state visit.
Okay, so I know Trump and Brexit are perhaps your two least favourite things, but Jean-Claude Juncker phones you up, President of the European Commission, of course, and says, look, Ben, let's just cancel this Brexit thing. It's a waste of time. What are you going to say?
Yeah.
Would you be tempted to cancel Brexit?
I would. I'd say fine.
Would you?
Yeah, I would. And I've kind of, do you know, I don't mind telling you my voting. I felt we would be stronger remaining in Europe. I was a Remainer. I still am a Remainer. But I also believe in democracy. And I think for the first year after the vote, I think we've had more than a year, haven't we?
Yeah.
For the first year, it feels like it's forever.
Yeah, it's felt more like 10 years.
For the first year after the vote, I felt that we had to stick to the democratic vote of the nation. That's how it works. You can't, it's like paper, rock, scissors. You can't lose twice and go, oh, can we just do a third? Can we just do a fourth?
Sure.
But now I think as more revelations have come out, the fact we knew and know so little about how this could work, the fact that so many people were deliberately misled from what I've read and what I've seen, I think it would be only fair to at least offer us one more vote to say, listen, this is the deal now. Do you want it or don't you want it? That strikes me as kind of a fair compromise. But then, is that going against democracy? I don't know. Does democracy even exist as it did 20 years ago? Maybe social media and the internet and outside parties have changed democracy beyond all recognition. But I have to admit, I think if Juncker did give the offer, I think I would say yes, let's leave it. I think the EU was broken. I think it needed repairing. I think there was huge waste, massive waste of money, too much power. It needed to be shaken, but you don't cut off your nose to spite your face.
Talking about people being put into two separate camps, into sort of gangs, I think you used that word. You do have concerns about younger people, and I know you want to change the education system. And what do you make of the current situation, the rise in knife crime in Britain? I mean, it's clearly a concerning issue.
I've got 2 young children. I live in a big city. Knife crime is rife here. I think young. From what I experience, and I go to a lot of different schools, so I do meet youngsters from every sector of the education system, and it strikes me that there's a lot of people that have no sense of belonging. They're kind of lost. So the education system, I was reading the other day, there are a lot of schools in the country that are closing at half day on a Friday now. You know, it's like the education system seems to have ground to a halt. We don't respect our teachers. In Scandinavia, teachers are some of the highest paid people in the country. So first of all, I think we need to increase the pay for our teachers. I'll take a hit on that. I'll up my tax. I'm happy to do that. I really don't.
You'd be happy to pay more tax.
I'd be happy to pay more tax if I know where that tax is going. What I don't like is paying more tax for it to all just be wasted on projects. I think if I could know that I was maybe it's not that we just up the tax to 50% or so as a higher rate. Maybe it's that there is a specific separate tax for people who are in the higher bracket that is just to go to education.
Okay, that's interesting. We could probably talk about that for the NHS.
We might be able to throw in an NHS. Well, the NHS, I've got quite strong principles on this. So NHS, simple to fix. People will be given an invoice every time they're treated. They will see how much that treatment cost them. Okay. If it's self-inflicted through alcohol and drugs, they will pay that themselves. Okay, quite so militant on that. Right, yeah, okay, absolutely.
Interesting.
Very militant on that. If you have overdrunk and you've done that, it's self-inflicted. You're going to pay that, and we know that is nearly 70%, maybe even more, of A&E intakes each night. Knife crime is a massive worry for me with children growing up in the city, and I think we need to give youngsters in cities throughout the UK a sense of belonging. I think we all need a sense of belonging. I think we are. I spend a lot of time with different people all around the world, whether it's tribes in the Amazon rainforest or indigenous groups up in the Andes of South America. We love a sense of identity. Look at football. People love that tribal, wearing the same shirt, being passionate about one thing. But we also need a sense of tribalism when it comes to community. And how many people know their neighbours? not a great
Not many
deal
in
now.
London.
So there isn't that. So in the 50s, the 40s, perhaps community was your tribe, but now that's kind of lost. And unless you have boxing or football or singing, unless you've got something that is your thing, you're kind of slightly lost. Where do you belong? And I think maybe that's one of the reasons why knife crime is increasing. I don't know enough about it, but I think the kind of the gangland attitude that this is my place, you looked at me the wrong way, how dare you do that? I think if we gave youngsters something to believe in, something to latch onto, and for me, and I had great privilege, so I'm acutely aware of that, but for me, what gave me a sense of kind of purpose was when I travelled, when I saw how lucky we are in this country, what a great nation we are. So to return to a sort of form of national service, I think at 17, everyone has to spend the equivalent of a term working at the NHS, working for the police, maybe on the streets, working for the fire brigade, maybe they're going to work for a charity, maybe they will join the military.
Yeah.
But to spend a little bit of time to find out whether that is a tribe they want to belong to, and also just to see what NHS doctors and nurses, A&E staff, police on the beat, firemen, what they have to go through. I think it would start to bring respect back to youngsters, because that's what's kind of lost, respect. Where does respect lie when the authority is kind of gone now? This kind of whole idea of the super woke society where we're so worried about offending people now. Police are worried about stopping someone for the wrong reason, that they'll be accused of being homophobic or racist because they've stopped the wrong person. Everyone's walking, it's like the whole nation is treading on eggshells right now, and I know
Okay.
I know it's often described as the
PC
snowflake,
culture. Oh, snowflake culture, yeah.
snowflake culture that everyone is instantly outraged, and we're not really. We use social media and we think everyone's outraged, but it's pseudo outrage. It's not nice when you're part of that outrage on the internet, but it's all kind of it's probably the conversation that often happened, but we just weren't aware of it.
Yeah.
It might have been in graffiti on a wall, and now it's there for everyone to see. And I'm always amazed when newspapers highlight Twitter or Instagram or Facebook abuse by repeating some of the things that have been written on social media. It's kind of, I don't understand why they're suddenly listening to just a bit of gossip and using that as something serious.
Newsworthy, right, okay. It's interesting that you think that maybe society is too sensitive then.
I think it is far too sensitive
Yeah.
now. And I think that's to the detriment of children who are going to be. I think we need to be much. Listen, the whole Me Too movement and our change of attitudes towards men and women and sexism that was rife, obviously back in the 60s. I think it's incredibly important that we have changed and we have progressed. But I think the fact that people get into such trouble now for saying seemingly innocuous things is a little bit worrying. You have to think really carefully. There's a couple of topics I could get onto now, but I don't want to because I don't
too
want
dangerous.
I don't want the abuse. I'll give you an example, and I won't even tell you what I think about it. But transgender competing in transgender women competing in women's sport.
It's been a very controversial
I think
topic.
It's highly controversial, and that isn't one example of the many topics that we can't really discuss because it's too sensitive.
It's really interesting talking to you, and this isn't a criticism whatsoever, but you probably just reflect what lots of us think and feel, which is that you seem to be full of some conflict at times. So on the one hand, you're very liberal.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you feel as if there's a bit of a snowflake culture. You had your sort of socialist, communist past, but equally you're sceptical about necessarily raising taxes for tax's sake. So there seems to be kind of quite a mix of politics inside you, and you're not necessarily absolutely wedded to one ideological view.
And this is probably where our parties need to start thinking. I think there's a lot of people like me that haven't found a party who represents all of those thoughts. And you're right, I'm slightly conflicted in some of my thoughts, because on one hand, I think taxation, we've got our taxation system wrong, and that's not. I'm not. People would interpret that saying that I'm fed up of paying too much tax. That couldn't be further from the truth. I just want to know that tax is not wasted. We know how much wastefulness there is out there, and I think if we knew, a bit like insisting that patients that go to the NHS saw on a piece of paper how much that treatment was costing them. I don't think anyone has a clue how, an ambulance call out is like £1,000, I think, or £500.
It is a huge amount of money.
It's a tremendous amount that a lot of people don't fully realise. And the same, if the government could give me, in the same way when I do my tax return, I have to be very, very careful. I would love if the government could at some stage give me a full breakdown of what they were spending on, how they were spending it, and what they plan to do with that money. Because if they were focusing on some of the really broken sectors of our society, the NHS and our education system, I think I would be very happy for them to increase it. But you're right, I am slightly conflicted.
I'll tell you another topic that's full of conflict, which might be a good scenario for you. Shamima Begum, the young girl who went to join ISIS, now a woman. Would you let her back in the country, do you think?
Wow, my wife and I are divided on this. We've chatted a lot. It's a fascinating debate, this. I think if I was Prime Minister, I think sadly, I think she does have to be made. We have to use her as a model to the rest of the nation and the world looking on.
As an example.
That's the word I wanted to use. We have to use her as an example to say, you can't just go off and join an extreme terrorist organisation that chops off people's heads and does hideous things, and then as soon as it all falls apart, come back and say, "Oh, sorry, I made a mistake." Now, people do make mistakes, and she was very young when she made that mistake, but we have to make an example of her, because there are lots of I see how my young children absorb information. They're 8 and 9. They listen to everything we're doing. They see everything.
Especially with the internet now, they can absorb anything they want to.
They will see that, and if youngsters are seeing that you can just go off and then you're welcomed back, and everyone's just like, "Oh, that was a bad decision, wasn't it?" This wasn't just having too many pints in the pub and vomiting at the end of the day,
which you're going to be charged for at A&E under Ben Fogle's regime.
It wasn't, this wasn't just a little mistake that had no wider impact. This had massive ramifications. Who knows what who knows what she was complicit in out in Syria? I don't know what she was part of. I don't know what she was, how many lives she may have been complicit in ending. I don't know. This is all
it's
hypothesis,
hard, isn't it? Because she was a child when she went out there as well. This is the counter view, of course, which as a political correspondent I always like to put to people. Because she was a child when she went out there, so you could sort of argue that actually, did she know her own mind? Was she brainwashed?
And this is my wife and I have this debate, and my wife feels quite strongly that we do make mistakes, and sometimes it's a bit like with prisoners. Are we going to do we send them to prison as a punishment or as rehabilitation, and do we give them a second chance? And I think the liberal in me is definitely says we give people a second chance. That I actually think most people are integrally good. I think we can just make bad decisions. So I think my political hat is saying she has to be made an example of.
Sure.
But actually, as a father and as someone who does believe in giving people a second chance, I think we need to look at it very carefully. And I think there's probably a compromise somewhere in the middle, that she does come back, but she has to pay for the mistake that she made, and the payment might be going into prison. It might be becoming a very loud voice to try and dissuade people from doing the same thing, going to schools, doing a form of community service, long-term community service. Okay. We're not just talking a week of going into schools.
A lifetime, really, of
a lifetime
service.
Of becoming a figure like Malala, who was at one extreme, but she will do the same sort of thing. I made this mistake. So I've given you probably a politician's answer there, haven't I? Kind of
think
slightly skirted around it.
No, but I think, as I say, that's what's interesting about this conversation is that you obviously have your own pros and cons in your own mind about something. Not everyone has a clear view on everything.
If we put it to a referendum, it would be 50-50, I think, in this nation right now.
Yeah, it could well be. I mean, let's not put it to a referendum, no, please. Let's just finish off with some fun questions. So you're going to have to go somewhere on holiday as Prime Minister because they'll want those snaps of you chillaxing on the beach. Where's your favourite? I know, that's a Cameron phrase.
Isn't it?
It's so Cameron.
So cheesy.
Where's your favourite place? Where would you like to do that with your family?
Without the Outer Hebrides. Outer Hebrides of Scotland. Love it. I think it's...
Winter or summer? Still the Outer Hebrides?
Actually, do you know what? Both seasons work pretty well. They'd be good photo ops because it's dramatic.
You might be a bit bedraggled though.
You might, yeah. We
might be writing captions about you.
I took my
bedraggled
wife,
Prime Minister.
I took my wife to the Outer Hebrides for our honeymoon, and all our honeymoon photos are us with big hoods up over our heads, freezing cold. Even the dogs that we took with us look miserable.
What would your Downing Street pet be?
Oh, well, Larry's gone, I'm afraid. Larry the cat.
Why?
I'm allergic to cats.
Okay, that's a good reason. So,
I'm allergic to cats, and so all those cat lovers, don't worry, I don't hate cats, but I've just never... It's... Cats, you just... I can't read them very well. A dog, it just looks at you and it's unforgiving and it loves
what they want.
you. You know what they want, food or a hug. A cat will kind of look at you lovingly and then like scratch you across the face. So I think Larry is going to be replaced by a dog. I think my instinct would be a Labrador just because I've always had Labs, but I think I might also rehome a dog from Battersea. I think that would again set the tone. Nice kind of mongrel, mixed breed, kind of shaggy coat. I think that would suit Downing Street.
It'd be a pretty good promotion for that dog, wouldn't it? From the dog's home to Downing Street.
Yeah, that's one of your roles. You know, that
bit of social mobility there in the dog world.
It would, yeah. I don't think we call it the first dog or cat like they do in the United States. No. I think there needs to be a term though for the Prime Minister's dog or cat. There should be the prime dog.
Prime dog, prime cat.
It sounds
top
like something
cat
from Amazon.
Top cat, top dog.
Top dog. Yeah.
And just lastly, you have touched on this before, but would you ever want to be Prime Minister? Would you ever fancy a career in politics?
I've dabbled with it. I've dabbled with it a few times, but do you know what? My wife has said she'd prefer that I go and try and climb K2 than to become.
It does have an impact on someone's family as well.
It's a thankless task. I think you will never. You'll never really be appreciated for what you've done. But having said that, after this whole conversation you've seen, I'm all over the place. So you never know. I might announce my prime ministerial bid in a month's time.
All right. Well, look, Ben Fogle, you've been a fascinating Prime Minister for the afternoon. Thank you so much for having us.
Pleasure.
We'll send you back into the wilderness now, the political wilderness maybe. Yeah. Back to what you love doing.
Okay. Don't hate me, everyone, from my thoughts.
Nobody's going to hate you.
Only 50% of the nation.